This is the BBC Home Service. The German government has issued a statement saying they have decided to take over the protection of Denmark and Norway.
On the 9th of April 1940, German armed forces occupied Norwegian ports and airfields.
They took over Norway within a matter of weeks. They took over the central command of government. The Norwegian government escaped to Britain.
That's Neil Bascom, author of The Winter Fortress. The King of Norway, Håkon VII, and his son, Crown Prince Olaf, were forced to leave and fled across the sea to England. Adolf Hitler wanted Norway for 3 reasons: to secure Germany's supply of iron ore, to command 13,000 miles of coastline,
and the third reason they wanted to go into Norway was, of course, heavy water.
German scientists had discovered nuclear fission at the end of 1938. The Nazi regime considered 2 potential applications for this technology: nuclear energy and nuclear weapons. Heavy water, also known as deuterium oxide, was a key ingredient to both.
The heavy water was produced in a single factory in Norway. This factory was set on the edge of a precipice, hundreds of miles west of Oslo.
The Vemork hydroelectric power plant, the first site in the world to mass-produce heavy water. As soon as the Nazis invaded the country, they seized this plant.
And they began increasing production first 2-fold, then 4-fold, then 10-fold, and even beyond.
Allied intelligence soon noticed the increase in heavy water production. They feared that the Germans might build a bomb of unprecedented power. Churchill wrote, "We knew what efforts the Germans were making to procure supplies of heavy water. A sinister term, eerie, unnatural, which began to creep into our secret papers. What if the enemy should get an atomic bomb before we did?"
So by the summer of 1942, the Allies know that they want this plant destroyed. And then it becomes a question of how.
The United States considered airborne bombing raids to destroy the Vemork plant, yet the chance of success was not high. The plant was located on a waterfall in difficult terrain of extreme peaks and valleys with strong fortifications. Heavy water was produced in its basement. Moreover, 5,000 people lived in the neighbouring town. The Allies were reluctant to risk civilian deaths on this scale. They needed to plan a special operation, and they needed local knowledge.
In order for the mission to stop the German atomic bomb, you needed commandos, but you needed a special kind of commando. You needed ones who were winter warriors, people who knew how to ski, who knew how to survive in an environment of ice and stone, in a place where it got so cold, legend said, so fast that flames froze in the fire. And you need soldiers who were able to survive for weeks, potentially months on end, while being pursued by the Nazis.
You needed superheroes. I'm Helena Bonham Carter, and for BBC Radio 4, this is History's Secret Heroes. True stories of deception, acts of resistance, and courage from World War II. Skiing Commandos. The mission was codenamed Operation Grouse. Just 4 young Norwegian men were selected by the British Special Operations Executive, known as SOE, to take part.
They were all from the area around Vemork. 2 of them were best friends growing up, Jan Anton Paulsen and Klaus Helberg. The 2 others, Knut Haugland was a radio operator, also from the area. And finally, you have Arne Helstrup, who was a plumber prior to the war breaking out.
The only trained soldier among them was Paulsen, a second lieutenant in his early 20s.
The others 3 of Operation Grouse were just local Norwegian boys who were at their core patriots. They wanted to fight the Germans. They didn't know how. They made the arduous journey to England to be trained, and then they wanted to go back and fight.
Paulsen, speaking to the BBC in 1973, recalled his briefing from the head of Norwegian Special Operations.
The thing I remember is that they told us that if the Germans get hold of the heavy water, they would be able to blow up the whole of London.
My name is Else Marie Paulsen Potter, Mia on a daily basis, and I'm the youngest daughter of Jens Anton Paulsen, who was the leader of Grouse.
Today, Mia Paulsen Potter lives in a suburb of Oslo, but her family hails from the dramatic landscapes of Telemark, the region around Vemork.
It's absolutely beautiful. You know, you get to the tree line, and from there on, it's big mountains, so high actually that they are without sun throughout the winter months. It's a rough environment, really is, but beautiful.
Paulsen Potter's father grew up among these mountains, learning to ski and hunt.
They would hunt grouse, they would hunt hare, and especially reindeer. He would know, you know, the terrain, the mountain plateau, more or less like his own pocket, because that's where he loved to be.
As an adult, Jens Anton Paulsen often took his daughter on his expeditions. Once, when she was a teenager, they were returning home from the mountains.
Normally that would happen by snow scooter. And then all of a sudden he said, are you willing to try and walk down the ice, you know, to get home instead of doing the scooter? And as I always said with him, I said, yes, of course, you know.
It would be a trek of 40 kilometres, just about manageable in clear conditions.
But this day it was a terrible blizzard. It was really cold and horrible. But anyway, we set off, and it was rough and hard. I couldn't see anything. It was just white. The ice and the sky sort of blended together. Every time we stopped, the little dog was digging a hole to try and find shelter.
On they trudged through the blizzard. Night fell, and the forest went from white to pitch black. Then, a local farmer drove by on a snow scooter. He offered Paulsen and his daughter a lift.
And then my father gave me the choice, you know, said if you're absolutely finished, can't do anymore, then we jump on the scooter. And, you know, it's all I really wanted to do, but at the same time, you know, I felt like, no, I've come so far, I want to continue. No, I'm going to do it.
They finished the trip on foot. When Mia Paulsen Potter was finally home, she felt elated, like she'd learned something very important from her father.
Mind over matter, you know. You can do more than you think. That was a great lesson.
In October 1942, Paulsen and his 3 comrades in Operation Grouse parachuted into an area above the Vemork plant called the Hardangervidda. Their mission was to lay the groundwork for what was to be called Operation Freshman. 2 teams of specially trained Royal Engineers and British paratroopers who would fly in by glider. Once they had landed, the plan was that the commandos of the Operation Freshman would ski to Vemork, force their way into the plant and blow it up. Afterwards, they would ski another 200 miles to Sweden to escape. First, though, Operation Grouse had to prepare for the commandos' gliders to land in November 1942.
Operation Grouse is on the ground. They have a radio beacon. The weather is clear. They radio back that the operation should go. Planes come over. The weather changes very quickly on the Vita, and it got just absolutely terrible that evening. The cloud cover lowered. There was sleet and ice, and the visibility was cut down to almost zero.
The pilots could not see the landing site. Worse yet, the radio beacon wasn't working.
And so these pilots were lost on where to drop these soldiers. Sadly, they circled around to try to find it. One of the gliders was accidentally released, crashed into a mountainside. The other bomber towing the other glider crashed. That glider crashed with it.
A total of 41 men of Operation Freshman either died in the crashes or were captured and eventually executed by the Nazis. What was more,
the Germans now know that the Allies know about Vemork and want to have it destroyed. And so they increased defenses at the plant to make it even more formidable and impossible to destroy.
The Nazis assumed, correctly, that there must be some locals who'd been planning to help the Allied commandos. Immediately, they launched a manhunt.
The team of Operation Grouse escapes up into the Vita, goes tens of miles into this empty terrain, going from one cabin, winter cabin, to the next, gathering what few supplies they can find, and just escape further and further away from civilization. It would be like escaping to the moon, right? This desolate area that's almost unreachable, and it was the only place that they could hide.
Paulsen hoped the Allies would soon order his men to cross the border to Sweden.
But Operation Grouse is informed that you need to stay. They're told you need to stay in the area. You can't escape to Sweden. We're going to have another force launched to take over Vermont, and so you need to remain on the ground, survive until that operation is ready and those forces are dropped.
While the Allies went back to the drawing board, all the men of Operation Grouse could do was wait. They found a trapper's cabin for shelter.
They have very few supplies with them. They can't contact the local population for help. They are on their own.
These men were used to surviving the Nordic outdoors for days at a time, but they had not prepared for a long trip. It was also in the middle of winter. Temperatures were freezing. Survival in such harsh conditions would normally require meticulous preparation, but they had to improvise.
They were exhausting so much energy and so many calories just moving around this landscape, and their stores of food were limited and were soon depleted.
We managed, first of all, by eating moss from under the snow.
That's Klaus Hellberg in an interview from 1973.
We thought that when the reindeer could live on moss, we could. It wasn't very good. But after 2 weeks, I think it was about Christmas time, we saw the first reindeer.
Finally, at some point, they managed to shoot a reindeer or two. Of course, being a hunter, my father would know how to slaughter. Blood was new to us, and that you could use the stomach contents of the animal as a source of vitamins, in order to avoid scurvy.
They ate literally every part of that animal, from the fat behind its eyelids to its meat, to the eyeballs, to the marrow, to the bones. I mean, they needed every part of that reindeer.
Owing to the northerly altitude, the men just saw a few hours of light each day.
And it got so cold that frost was growing on the inside of the cabin. And slowly over the winter, the cabin would get smaller and smaller because of the hoarfrost growing on the inside. And the final thing is you're bored. Beyond going out for reindeer hunts and making the fire, you're 4 young men stuck in a one-room cabin for months.
As the leader, Paulsen was under pressure.
One of the big challenges was for Paulsen to create this team that was going to work together to survive. They would even hold lectures at night.
Hellberg recited poetry. Haugland taught the others how to operate a radio.
Paulsen, who was an expert hunter, had these 10 rules of hunting that he made this team memorize. And Hjelstrup would describe how to plumb a toilet.
By February 1943, the 4 members of Operation Grouse had survived in the wilderness for 4 months. At last, a message arrived from London. A new mission was imminent. It was codenamed Operation Gunnicide. In Scotland, 6 Norwegians were trained by SOE in explosives, sabotage, and hand-to-hand combat.
The plan was for them to drop in to Norway, connect with the members of Operation Grouse.
And together, these men would break into the plant and destroy it.
If they're caught and they're discovered to be Norwegians, the retribution against the local civilian population would be absolutely brutal.
For this reason, the Norwegian Commandos would pose as British soldiers, wearing British uniforms and speaking English. The 6 men flew across the sea in an RAF bomber and parachuted into the Hardangervidda, where they met up with a Norwegian agent on the ground.
Again, I mean, What they faced then was what many of them called the worst blizzard that had been seen in 100 years. It would literally lift you off the feet and throw you backwards.
After a few days of searching, the 7 finally found the 4 men of Operation Grouse: Paulsen, Haugland, Helberg and Kjelstrup. They were near starvation. Their eyes were sunken, their skin yellowed and thin. On the 27th of February, the new team of 11 men skied cross-country to a cabin overlooking the Vemork plant.
If you see it from a distance, it looks like a castle. It's this enormous structure of steel and stone, tens and tens of thousands of pounds over multiple levels, set on the edge of this precipice, looking down into this sort of cut valley, very precipitous. I mean, you fall off that's the end.
Following the catastrophe of Operation Freshman, the Germans had stepped up security around Vemork. A suspension bridge had been closed, so the only way in and out was via a single-lane railroad. The surrounding mountainside had been peppered with landmines. Guards with dogs patrolled the perimeter.
This place is seemingly impossible to infiltrate.
Allied reconnaissance planes had photographed the terrain and noticed a ravine on the cliffside.
But you have Paulsen and Helberg, who are actually from this town. They grew up there. They were told as children, under no circumstances are you to rappel down and go into this slotted canyon. It is too dangerous. This is exactly what Operation Gunnerside decides to do. They are going to ski and then climb down into this canyon, cross this river in the middle of the night, in the middle of winter, and then climb this icy precipice to the plant, and then quietly, secretly break through the gates, go into the plant, and blow it up.
The men of Operation Gunnerside were prepared for the worst.
They know it's almost an impossible mission. They have cyanide capsules in their lapels in case it goes wrong, and they need better to be to die by cyanide than to be captured by the Germans.
Even if they could get into the Vemork plant, it seemed unlikely that they would get out alive. The operations commander, Lieutenant Joachim Runeberg, held a vote. Should they risk their lives to go ahead with this mission? All the men voted that they should. Then they skied to the entrance of the ravine.
And then it's nighttime, and they're looking up at this cliffside, and Runeberg likened it to staring at a skyscraper and knowing that you have to climb it, and that every edge is of ice.
Allied intelligence had gathered information about the Vemork plant. The commandos knew every stairwell and where the locks were located on every door. The commandos skied down the mountain opposite Vemork, where they came to a road crossing. As they did so, 2 trucks filled with Nazi soldiers roared by. The commandos managed to hide just in time.
They ultimately became so steep that they had to put their cross-country skis away and slip and slide their way on their bottoms many times, and cascading through the snow to reach the bottom of this canyon. And that was really just the start.
The men climbed hundreds of feet up a cliff and crossed Vemork's perimeter at midnight. They split into 2 groups. 4 men, led by Lieutenant Runeberg, would set explosives to destroy the electrolysis chambers used to create heavy water. The others would stand guard. They hoped to enter through an open door leading into the basement of the plant.
They go to this door, they find that it's locked.
But because they'd studied the architectural plans, down to the plumbing and utility systems, they could see there was an air duct out of the basement, a 2-foot wide vent that was just about possible to squeeze through.
They climbed up into this air duct, they crawled through it, they reached the heavy water plant, and then dropped inside of it. And what they discovered surprised them.
There were no guards.
There was only a single Norwegian in the heavy water plant because the Germans didn't think it was possible that the plant could be infiltrated without the alarms, and that someone could reach the inside of the plant, that they left it unguarded.
Runeberg began to set the explosives.
They know that they need enough time to run, but not enough time for the Germans to stop the fuses from running and exploding the bombs that they set around the plant. They set these, they've practiced it, they have the timing down to the half second. They put all these explosives into place. They fear that they're going to be found out. They run a shorter fuse and light it and then run like hell.
As the explosives went off, the men raced down the single railroad lane that curved around the mountain. To the sound of sirens beginning to wail, they hurled themselves back into the ravine.
The manhunt has already begun. The German troops are coming from the local town. I mean, everything is intensifying by the second, and so they need to get as far away as quickly as they can before it becomes impossible. Inside the plant, it's absolute destruction. They've destroyed the key essential apparatus of the heavy water factory. It is spewing water and smoke and fire. The Germans are absolutely stunned, and the officer in charge knows that he needs to find these saboteurs as quickly as possible.
Thousands of Nazi soldiers were dispatched to search the area. Klaus Hellberg was nearly captured in a mountain hut.
I went out as quickly as I could. I took on my skis in a second or two and ran away as fast as I could. And the Germans, they hadn't managed to surround me, so it was an open gap I could get through.
Hellberg didn't believe he could escape, but sped forth on his skis anyway. He looked back, and to his surprise, most of the Nazis pursuing him had been left behind.
Except for two of them. And they chased me for about 1 hour, maybe 2 hours. And then one of them was probably exhausted. So after that, one was chasing me. And I understood after a while that he was quicker than me downhill. And I was quicker uphill. And therefore I tried to find so many uphills as I possibly could. At the end I was on the highest top in the Hardangervidda Plateau. And from now on it was only downhill. After about a quarter of an hour, I heard his skis and sticks close behind me. And he got closer and said, "Hände hoch, hands up." I turned around and I fired at him. I turned then. And I didn't look around anymore. I ran my way, and then the darkness came, and I felt quite safe.
Incredibly, every single man of Operation Gunnerside escaped into the Hardangervidda.
They were called the ghosts of the Vida because they simply disappeared. They had these white winter suits. 6 of them skied hundreds of miles to the Swedish border, almost on this sort of death march, and got there quickly.
Once he was out of the area, Jens Anton Paulsen spotted a nearby lodge. The opportunity to sleep in a warm bed for the night was too good to miss.
He was sitting in his room and there was a knock on the door, and a policeman and his sergeant walked in and looked around, and my father's heart was beating because in the middle of the room was his unveiled backpack, which was stuffed with British maps and matches and British tea bags and what have you. But he was at that point sitting with his sweaty palm over his gun in his pocket, ready to shoot his way out, but kept his calm and asked the policeman what was going on.
The policeman said there had been an incident at Vermok. He was checking everybody coming down from the mountains.
The whole thing ended with my father saying that, "Well, I hope you catch these bandits." And the policeman was answering that, "I hope not, because I think they're very dangerous and armed."
Operation Gunnerside destroyed 1/2 ton of heavy water, and the electrolysis chambers at Vermok were seriously damaged.
They set back production of heavy water for the Nazis by roughly 6 months. And in the pursuit of the bomb, 6 months is a lifetime.
Bulletins in Norwegian will be broadcast every evening from 6:30 till 6:45 p.m. British Summer and Central European Time.
In London, Norway's King Haakon VII had set up a court in exile. He'd also become a symbol of resistance. Norwegians heard of the sabotage at Vemork from his broadcast on the BBC. The members of Operation Gunnerside became the most decorated group of saboteurs in World War II. Against all odds, these young men had survived truly extreme conditions and an incredibly dangerous mission. Their motive had simply been to serve their country while it was under Nazi occupation. After the war, some of them remained in the military. Others became ski guides. Kjelstrup returned to his work as a plumber.
So they all lived these rather normal lives, but they would get together every single year and have reunions, and it was something that marked their lives.
You could see that there was a special connection, absolutely.
Jens Anton Paulsen returned to Britain in 1943. He travelled to Scotland to meet King Haakon VII. The king awarded him the War Cross with sword, Norway's highest honour for gallantry. Paulsen recorded his response in his diary.
Here I am walking around like a Christmas tree, and I'm starting to feel like hell of a guy. And then he adds, well, for what eating reindeer meat for 4 months? And then he says, well, it was fun to be decorated, but the king's handshake was really what warmed his heart deeply. First and foremost, he was my deeply beloved father. I loved him to pieces. I had a very strong bond to him. So that overshadows everything else. When you look at today's youth and think that this was not only him, but these boys were in their early 20s, and what they were actually willing to risk, that is quite amazing, I think. So yeah, I'm very, very proud of him, and I still miss him every day.
Next time on History's Secret Heroes, Eric Roberts, a bank worker from Surrey, joins MI5 to hunt for would-be traitors.
And the job is, we would like you to join the British Union of Fascists, go along, get involved, see what you can find out.
Jack King and the Fifth Column.